So as Prime Minister Narendra Modi completes 4,399 days in office and becomes India's longest-serving elected Prime Minister, now there are, wishes that have been pouring in from across the world. Speaking exclusively to Times Now, former Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has also praised Prime Minister Narendra Modi's leadership, describing him as a true statesman.
Joining us today is a very special guest, former Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison. Thank you very much, sir, for speaking with us here on Times Now. Now, it's a very important day for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He's crossed a major political milestone. He's become the longest-serving Prime Minister in India. Your thoughts on his governance, his leadership style?
Well, it is a very significant day, but I suspect, knowing the Prime Minister, that he wouldn't be, as we'd say, too fussed about it. He'd be focusing on the job that he has, and in all my dealings with him over around about 4 years when I was Prime Minister, I found him very practical, very pragmatic, very much focused on the task at hand. But I think it's important to mark this occasion. It is a very significant day, not just in Indian politics, but I think it demonstrates a longevity of leadership that has had an impact also right around the world, certainly on the relationship with Australia, but his championing of the Indo-Pacific. We were both founding members of the Quad Leaders Dialogue, and he really has helped elevate that to a globally important forum. But on top of that, I think Narendra has been a great champion of the Global South. I think his own leadership of India has put forward a very positive economic role model for developing countries all around the world. Now, India today is an economic powerhouse. It's one of the key economic drivers of the Indo-Pacific, and certainly in the Indian Ocean domain, maritime theatre. And to top that off, his relationships on security, defence, cybersecurity, all of these things has positioned him, I think, as one of the world's great leaders.
Okay. You've also called him a true statesman who's transformed India's economy and standing in the world. In your opinion, how has India's stature on the global stage really changed under his leadership?
I think, I'm a former treasurer of finance ministry, as you'd call it, in India, and what I saw transform from those days earlier on in his prime ministership was he has digitised the Indian economy. He's modernised the Indian economy, and he's done it just not to see growth, but he's done it to increase inclusion in the Indian economy. In every engagement I had with him, I could always sense that one of the things that he carried most heavily was the responsibility to ensure that India's economic performance and prosperity could reach right across its population. And it's an enormous challenge for a country of India's scale and of the complexity of India. But that is something I think he's used technology, he's used digitisation, he's used tax reform and many other regulatory changes to ensure that the Indian economy is far more efficient. And there is much more work to be done, I'm sure he'd say, but it really is an economic partner of choice all around the world now. And that has principally happened under his leadership, where he has embraced a very different economic model for India.
Okay. Your first in-person meeting with Prime Minister Modi happened in September 2021 during COVID. Something about that meeting that perhaps stayed with you?
I think we'd met sometime before that as well on several occasions, but that's by the by, because during COVID we were meeting, as we were with so many other leaders, virtually and so on. So particularly in the Quad, when we were focused on vaccine distribution and working through the Quad to achieve that. But I found him a very wise soul, to be honest. That's how he comes across. He's relatively quietly spoken, and while he understands English perfectly, I always used to admire how he would speak in Hindi, and because it was a statement of India's sovereignty and that India had to be heard in its own voice. And I was very impressed by that. Shinzo Abe, the late Shinzo Abe in Japan, was very similar, I found, to Narendra Modi. I had a deep admiration for him also, and I sort of clubbed them together somewhat. Very, very gentle in the way they spoke, very respectful, but you could tell there was a great strength and steel behind it. And I think one of the hardest things for Indian leaders to do is to preserve that sense of Indian independence, but at the same time embrace new allies and partners to ensure their security in what is an increasingly unstable part of the world. And I think he's done that spectacularly.
Okay. Now, India is one country in the world that can be friends with Russia as well as Ukraine, while both sides are at a war. And then similar is the situation in West Asia as well. India is friends with Israel, Iran, as well as the United States of America. What do you make of this position that India really is in and the potential it really carries going forward at a time when we're talking about this changing world order?
I think what's important to recognize, and I think Narendra Modi is key to that. And I'd also give Minister Jaishankar a great deal of credit as well in terms of how he's been a very able support, I think, to the Prime Minister. And that is essential. I was very well served by my Foreign Minister, Maurice Prain, for similar reasons. But what I think that says is you've got a leader that is very aware of India's own national interests. And the way he would represent them would not be in any provocative way. But every single leader understands that another country's leader is going to pursue their own interests. And Prime Minister Modi has a way of doing that without being confrontational. You can totally respect where he's coming from and what he's seeking to achieve. And sometimes when he has to say no. I remember when we were trying to negotiate RCEP with the East Asia Summit and the ASEAN nations. And we tried very hard to try and get India on board. And at the end of the day, Prime Minister Modi had to say, look, I just can't do it. That is not something that I think is consistent with India's interests. And the way he'd conducted himself honestly and up front in those negotiations, I think was to his credit. Now, it wasn't that long after that Australia was able to enter into a free trade agreement with India. And that came very much down to our relationship. But it wasn't that he was not opposed to any trade agreement. It was just that one was not in India's interests.
Okay.
And so I think the ability to balance that is a real skill.
Interesting. How do you think the relationship between India and Australia has really evolved under his leadership ever since he came to power?
Oh, it's its highest level ever. There's no question about that. And that's during a time when we were both winning cricket matches. So we couldn't put it down to one side winning or the other. We were both had very strong teams, and that's one of the great enjoyable rivalries of global sport is India and Australia when we play for over 5 days. But putting that to one side, I had the great honour of working with Prime Minister Modi to bring about the comprehensive strategic partnership. There were deep partnerships on defence, on security, on cybersecurity, on maritime issues, and then that extended into the economic trade agreement. And that continues to this day under the new Australian government, of which I'm very pleased. But there's been a common denominator in all of that, and that has been Prime Minister Modi. And he'll be coming to Australia again. Every time he comes here, it's like Bono from U2 turns up in Australia. He is quite a rock star amongst the diaspora here in Australia. And I think that's also something that has been very positive for Indian nationals who've gone to find home somewhere else. And many do in Australia. It's the number one source country for permanent migrants into Australia. And we have a very large diaspora here. And Prime Minister Modi has always been very attentive to that diaspora. Okay. And so while Australia is their home, he makes sure that they always don't remember their original home. Okay. They always remember their original home, I should say.
You've been a Prime Minister yourself. As a Prime Minister, what is that one thing that's really tough, something that he's managed to deal with as the Prime Minister?
Well, he's been able to keep his cool, I think, is a pretty good way to say it. He is a very measured person. He doesn't get distracted easily by things. He knows what his job is. He knows what his mission is, and he goes about it with partners, with allies, respectfully. And so he does keep a very consistent drumbeat to what he does. You always know when you're talking to Narendra Modi that there are domestic political issues that he must address, but that does not pull him away from India's more global responsibilities for things which often won't win him friends or votes in India, but he knows is important. And I think that has sort of elevated India globally at a time when we need leaders like Narendra Modi on the global stage.
one last message that you will like to, give to him on this day, on this, extremely important day, a milestone that he has achieved as the Prime Minister?
Just to wish my good friend a great congratulations. I mean, when you're a leader of a country, you really don't get the time to stop and contemplate moments like this. And I suspect he won't have much time to do that. But he will look back on it one day, and I'm sure he will reflect fondly on it and for what he's been able to achieve, and so he should. He is an outstanding leader for India. He has really injected a self-confidence and a real vibrancy into India, which I enjoy when I go and visit India. And he has transformed it. Not completely alone, as he would say. He's had many people he's worked with to achieve that. But it has been his vision and his passion for his country, which he loves, and the people which he loves, which I think has been transformational and has begun a whole new chapter, a whole new story for India.
All right, we leave it there. Mr. Scott Morrison, thank you very much for speaking with us here on Times Now and sharing with us your thoughts.
Thank you very much.